The dust on Elena Lawrence's boots had come from 7 different saloons in San Diego, California, and none of them had given her so much as a second glance when she asked about work. The year was 1878, and the harbor town was bustling with sailors, miners passing through, and cowboys driving cattle to the stockyards. But apparently there was no place for a 22-year-old woman who had lost everything when her father's general store burned down 3 months ago. She pushed through the swinging doors of the Silver Anchor Saloon, her 8th attempt of the day, and felt the weight of every stare as the piano music stuttered to a momentary halt before resuming its tinny melody. The bartender was a grizzled man with a scar running down his cheek, and he shook his head before she even reached the counter. "We got all the girls we need, miss. Try the laundry down on Harbor Street." "I already tried there," Elena said, hating how her voice wavered with desperation. "Please, I can serve drinks, I can clean, I can cook. I will do anything honest. Can't help you." He turned away, dismissing her as thoroughly as if she had never existed. Elena's throat tightened, but she refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of all these men who looked at her like she was either a nuisance or something worse. She turned toward the door, her vision blurring slightly at the edges, and nearly collided with a tall figure who had just entered. "Pardon me," she murmured, stepping aside. The man tipped his hat, revealing dark hair and eyes the color of weathered oak. He had the look of someone who spent his days under the sun, with tanned skin and lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled more often than he frowned. "No harm done, madam." Elena nodded and tried to move past him, but his voice stopped her. "Excuse me, I couldn't help but overhear. You are looking for work." She turned back, studying him with cautious hope. He was probably close to her age, maybe 25 at most, and he wore well-made clothes that marked him as someone with means but not pretension. A working man who worked for himself. "I am. Do you know of anyone hiring? I might." He glanced around the saloon, then gestured toward an empty table in the corner. "Would you mind if we talked for a moment? My name is Nathan Iverson. Elena Lawrence." She hesitated, weighing the risk against the gnawing hunger in her belly, and the knowledge that her small room above the seamstress shop was paid only through the end of the week. "All right." They settled at the table, and Nathan removed his hat, setting it on the chair beside him. Up close, she could see the calluses on his hands and the honest quality of his gaze. "I have a ranch about 5 miles north of here. Small operation, just me and 2 hands, but we run about 200 head of cattle. I have been needing someone to help with the house and the cooking. The bunkhouse has been managing their own meals, and I cannot tell you how tired I am of burned beans and tough biscuit." Elena felt something flutter in her chest, something that might have been hope if she dared to name it. "You are offering me a job." "I am offering you the opportunity if you want it," Nathan said carefully. "Work for me, but only if you want to. I will not pressure you either way. The pay would be $30 a month plus room and board. You would have your own room in the main house, separate from the bunkhouse. I would expect breakfast, lunch, and dinner for myself and the 2 ranch hands, as well as keeping the house in order. Laundry, mending, that sort of thing." $30, Elena repeated, stunned. That was more than fair, more than generous, really. Why would you offer this to a stranger? "You do not know anything about me." Nathan leaned back in his chair, and there was something thoughtful in his expression. "I know you have been to 8 saloons today looking for honest work. I know you said you would do anything honest, which tells me you have standards even when you are desperate. I know you apologized when you nearly ran into me even though I was the one in your way. That tells me enough about your character. As for references, if you have them, I would be glad to hear them. But I am a decent judge of people, Miss Lawrence, and my instinct says you are someone worth taking a chance on." She wanted to accept immediately, to grab onto this lifeline with both hands, but years of her father's cautious wisdom made her ask, "What about your wife? Would she not have something to say about bringing a strange woman into her home?" "I am not married," Nathan said simply. "I know how that might look, but I promise you, Miss Lawrence, my intentions are completely proper. You would have your own space, and I would expect nothing from you beyond the work I described. If at any point you feel uncomfortable or wish to leave, you are free to do so, no questions asked. I can even pay you weekly instead of monthly, so you are never trapped if you decide it is not working out." Lena studied him for a long moment, searching for any hint of deception or hidden motives. All she saw was a man who seemed genuinely kind and perhaps a little lonely. The ranch life was isolating, she knew that much. Her father had known several ranchers who came into town as much for the company as for the supplies. "I can cook," she said finally. "My mother taught me before she passed, and I am good with mending and cleaning. I helped run my father's store until—" She trailed off, not wanting to speak of the fire, of watching everything her family had built turn to ash and smoke. "Until," Nathan prompted gently, "until it burned down. He died in the fire trying to save the ledgers." The words came out flat, drained of emotion through sheer repetition. She had told this story so many times to so many people, explaining why she needed work, why she was alone. Nathan's expression softened with genuine sympathy. "I am sorry for your loss. That must have been terrible. Thank you." Elena took a breath, pushing away the memories. "When would you need me to start? Would tomorrow be too soon? I could arrange for a wagon to pick you up wherever you are staying, tomorrow." One more night in her tiny room, and then a whole new life on a ranch she had never seen with a man she had just met. It should have terrified her, but instead, Elena felt a strange sense of calm settle over her shoulders. Tomorrow would be fine. "I am staying above the seamstress shop on 3rd Street. I know the place. I will be there at 8 in the morning if that suits you." Nathan stood and offered his hand. "Thank you, Miss Lawrence. I have a feeling this is going to work out well for both of us." She shook his hand, noting the firm but respectful grip, and managed a small smile. "I hope you are right, Mr. Iverson. Please call me Nathan. We will be working together after all. Then you should call me Elena." He smiled, and it transformed his face, making him look younger and somehow more approachable. "Elena it is. I will see you tomorrow morning." She watched him leave the saloon, moving with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his own skin, and felt the first real glimmer of hope she had experienced since the fire. Maybe, just maybe, her luck was finally turning around. That night, Elena packed her few belongings into the worn carpet bag that had been her mother's. 3 dresses, 2 work dresses, and 1 good one for Sunday services. Undergarments, a nightgown, her mother's Bible, her father's pocket watch, a few precious letters, and the silver locket that held tiny portraits of both her parents. Everything she owned in the world fit into one bag, and the realization might have made her cry if she had any tears left. Instead, she lay on the narrow bed and thought about Nathan Iverson. He had kind eyes and a good handshake, and he had offered her work without demanding anything in return. In her experience, that made him either a saint or a very good liar, and she supposed she would find out which in short order. But something in her gut, the same instinct that had kept her safe during these desperate months, told her he was genuine. The morning came too quickly and too slowly at once. Elena was ready long before 8, sitting on the edge of her bed with her bag at her feet and her hands folded in her lap. When she heard the rattle of wagon wheels on the street below, she peered out the window and saw Nathan climbing down from the driver's seat. The wagon was well maintained but practical, with high sides for hauling goods, and the two horses pulling it looked healthy and well fed. She hurried down the narrow stairs and emerged onto the street just as Nathan reached for the door. "Good morning." "Good morning, Elena. Are you ready?" "I am." She held up her single bag as evidence. If he was surprised by how little she had, Nathan did not show it. He simply took the bag and stowed it carefully in the back of the wagon before helping her up onto the seat. The gesture was courteous without being overly familiar, and Elena appreciated the respect in it. They rolled out of San Diego as the town was waking up, passing shops opening their shutters and early risers heading to work. The harbor stretched to their left, full of ships with tall masts and the smell of salt and fish. To their right, the land began to rise into gentle hills covered in dry grass and scattered oak trees. "The ranch is in a valley between two hills," Nathan explained as they left the outskirts of town behind. "There is a creek that runs year-round, which is why my father chose the spot. He started the ranch 20 years ago, and I took over when he decided to move back east to live with my sister and her family." "Do you miss them?" Elena asked. "Sometimes. But this land gets in your blood. I could not imagine living anywhere else." He glanced at her. "What about you? Are you from San Diego?" "Born and raised. My father came out during the gold rush, but he was smarter than most. He opened a general store in San Diego instead of going to the mining camps. Said it was better to sell shovels to prospectors than to try digging for gold himself. Wise man." "He was." Elena looked out at the passing landscape, watching a hawk circle overhead. "He always said California was the land of second chances. I suppose I am testing that theory now." Nathan was quiet for a moment, then said, "I hope you find that he was right." The conversation flowed easily after that, touching on light topics and carefully avoiding anything too personal. Nathan told her about the ranch, about the two hands who worked for him, brothers named Jack and Thomas Wells who had been with him for 3 years. He described the routine of ranch life, the cattle drives to market, the constant work of maintaining fences and water sources and buildings. Elena found herself relaxing as they traveled, lulled by the rhythm of the wagon and the warm morning sun. This was not how she had imagined her life would go, leaving behind everything familiar to work as a housekeeper for a stranger, but it felt right in a way she could not quite explain. The ranch appeared as they crested a hill, nestled in the valley just as Nathan had described. The main house was a solid structure of wood and stone, single-story but sprawling, with a wide porch across the front. Behind it stood a barn, a bunkhouse, several corrals and various outbuildings. Cattle grazed in the fields beyond, dark shapes against the golden grass. "Welcome to the Iverson Ranch," Nathan said, a note of pride in his voice. "It is beautiful," Elena said honestly. There was something appealing about the tidiness of it all, the sense that this was a place where people took care of what they had. Nathan pulled the wagon up to the main house and helped Elena down. 2 men emerged from the barn, both lean and sun-weathered, curiosity evident in their expressions. "Jack Thomas, this is Miss Elena Lawrence. She will be taking care of the house and cooking for us. Elena, these are the Wells brothers. Jack is the older one and Thomas is the one with the scar on his chin." "That was a bull that thought he was a bucking bronco," Thomas said cheerfully, touching the scar in question. "Pleased to meet you, Miss Lawrence. We were starting to think Nathan would never find someone willing to come out here and suffer our company. She might not last the week once she tries to make sense of this kitchen," Jack added, but his tone was friendly. Nathan's mother was the last woman to organize it properly, and that was 5 years ago. "I am sure I will manage," Elena said, warming to them immediately. They had the easy manner of men who were comfortable with themselves and their place in the world. Nathan retrieved her bag from the wagon and gestured toward the house. "Let me show you around." The interior of the house was indeed in need of a woman's touch, but it was not as bad as Elena had feared. The main room was spacious, with a large stone fireplace, comfortable furniture that had seen better days, and windows that let in plenty of light. The kitchen was off to one side, and while it was disorganized, it was at least reasonably clean. "My room is down that hall," Nathan said, pointing to the left. "Your room is down this one, and there is a guest room next to it that we use for storage mostly. The washroom is at the end of the hall." He led her to her new room, and Elena felt her breath catch slightly. It was larger than she had expected, with a real bed, a wardrobe, a dresser with a mirror, and even a rocking chair by the window. The window itself looked out over the valley, offering a view of the grazing cattle and the hills beyond. "This is lovely," she said softly. "I am glad you think so." Nathan set her bag on the bed. "Take some time to settle in. I told the boys we would have lunch at noon, so no rush. The pantry is stocked, and if you need anything that is not there, just let me know. We make a supply run into town every 2 weeks. Thank you, Nathan, for all of this." He met her eyes, and there was something warm in his gaze. "Thank you for taking a chance on us. I think you will find it is a good place, Elena, a safe place." After he left, Elena sat on the edge of the bed and looked around her new room, a safe place. The words echoed in her mind like a promise, and for the first time in months, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, things would be all right. She unpacked her few belongings, hanging her dresses in the wardrobe and placing her parents' portraits on the dresser. The pocket watch went on the bedside table, and the Bible beside it. Then she changed into one of her work dresses and went to explore the kitchen. Jack had not been wrong about the organization, or lack thereof. Pots and pans were jumbled together, dry goods were stored in a haphazard fashion, and the spice rack looked like it had not been properly sorted in years. But the stove was in good working order. There was a pump for water right in the kitchen, and the pantry held a decent supply of flour, cornmeal, beans, salt pork, dried fruit, and various other staples. Elena rolled up her sleeves and got to work. By the time noon approached, she had made sense of the kitchen and prepared a lunch of fried salt pork, cornbread, stewed tomatoes, and dried apple pie for dessert. It was simple fare, but it was hearty and well made, the kind of food her mother had taught her to prepare. When she rang the bell that hung on the back porch, the 3 men appeared with remarkable speed, washing up at the pump outside before filing into the kitchen. They took seats at the long wooden table, and Elena served the food, suddenly nervous about their reaction. Nathan took a bite of the cornbread and closed his eyes. "This is perfect." "Madam, if you can cook like this every day, we might just build you a shrine," Thomas said, helping himself to a generous portion of everything. Jack nodded his agreement, his mouth too full to speak. Elena felt warmth spread through her chest, the simple pleasure of appreciation for work well done. "I am glad it meets with approval." She served herself a plate and started to retreat to her room, but Nathan stopped her. "You are welcome to eat with us, Elena. You are part of this household, not a servant we are ordering around." "Are you certain? I do not want to intrude." "You are not intruding," Jack said. "Besides, Thomas here has terrible table manners, and maybe he will behave better with a lady present." "I resent that," Thomas protested. "My manners are perfectly adequate." Elena found herself smiling as she took a seat at the table. The banter between the brothers was affectionate, and Nathan refereed with the ease of long practice. They asked her about San Diego, about her father's store, carefully avoiding the painful topic of the fire. She asked them about ranch life, about the cattle, about the land. It was, she realized with some surprise, the most pleasant meal she had eaten in months. Not because the food was fancy or the surroundings elegant, but because she felt welcome. She felt like she belonged. After lunch, the men returned to their work, and Elena cleaned up the kitchen before exploring the rest of the house. She found linens that needed mending, floors that needed sweeping, and windows that would benefit from a good washing. She made a mental list of tasks and set about tackling them with the same determination that had gotten her through the last difficult months. The afternoon passed quickly, and before she knew it, it was time to start preparing dinner. She made a pot roast with potatoes and carrots, using some beef from the cold storage shed and baked biscuits to go with it. For dessert, she stewed some dried peaches with cinnamon. Dinner was even more relaxed than lunch, with the men tired from their work but in good spirits. They told stories about mishaps with cattle and horses, about the time a skunk got into the barn, and about the traveling salesman who had tried to convince them they needed a patented automatic chicken feeder. "We do not have any chickens," Nathan said, laughing at the memory. I pointed this out to him, and he said that was exactly why we needed the feeder. It would be an incentive to get chickens. "Did you buy it?" Elena asked, caught up in the story. I did not, but Thomas was tempted. "It was a very impressive feeder," Thomas defended himself. "Very modern." Elena laughed, a genuine sound that felt strange after so long. She caught Nathan watching her with a soft expression, and when their eyes met, he smiled in a way that made something flutter in her chest. That night, lying in her comfortable bed and listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the countryside, Elena reflected on the strangeness of life. Just yesterday, she had been desperate and alone, facing the real possibility of starvation or worse. Today she had a home, a job, and something that almost felt like the beginnings of friendship. Nathan Iverson had kept his word about everything, offering her work without expectations, treating her with respect and kindness. She thought about his smile, about the way he had looked at her across the dinner table, and firmly told herself not to be foolish. He was her employer, nothing more. It would be a mistake to read anything into simple kindness. She had a good situation here, and she would not ruin it by developing inappropriate feelings. But as she drifted off to sleep, her last thought was of dark hair and warm eyes and a voice that said, "I have a feeling this is going to work out well for both of us." The first weeks at the ranch fell into a comfortable rhythm. Elena rose at dawn to prepare breakfast, packed lunches for the men when they would be working far from the house, and had dinner ready when they returned at dusk. In between, she cleaned and mended and organized, slowly transforming the house from a bachelor's quarters into a proper home. Nathan proved to be everything he had promised and more. He was unfailingly respectful, never entering her room without permission, never making demands beyond the work they had agreed upon. He paid her weekly as he had offered, counting out the money every Sunday evening and thanking her for her efforts. But more than that, he was kind. When he noticed she was low on thread for mending, he brought back an assortment of colors from town without being asked. When she mentioned missing the roses her mother had grown, he built her a small garden plot and helped her plant cuttings from a neighbor's ranch. When she worked late into the evening trying to finish a particularly difficult mending project, he sat with her by lamplight and told her stories about growing up on the ranch. Lena found herself looking forward to these quiet evenings more than she wanted to admit. Nathan was easy to talk to, with a dry sense of humor and a thoughtful way of looking at the world. He asked her opinions on things, from how to organize the tack room to what he should do about expanding the herd. He listened when she spoke, really listened, as if what she said mattered to him. "You have good instincts," he told her one night as they discussed whether he should buy a new bull. You see things clearly, without letting emotions cloud the practical considerations. My father used to say the same thing, Elena said, surprised by the compliment. He wanted me to take over the store one day, said I had a head for business. He was right. Nathan was whittling a piece of wood, his hands moving with practiced ease. Have you ever thought about starting another store, once you have saved up enough capital? Elena was quiet for a moment, watching the wood shavings fall to the floor. Honestly, I do not know if I have the heart for it anymore. That store was my father's dream, his legacy. Starting a new one feels like trying to replace something irreplaceable. What is your dream, then? The question caught her off guard. No one had asked her that in so long, maybe ever. She had always been so focused on helping her father achieve his dreams, on being the dutiful daughter, that she had never stopped to consider what she wanted for herself. I am not sure, she admitted. I suppose I always thought I would marry eventually, have a family, but that was just what was expected, not necessarily what I wanted. Does that make sense? It makes perfect sense. Nathan looked up from his whittling, his eyes serious. I think a lot of people never stop to ask themselves what they really want. They just follow the path that is laid out for them. Is that what you did? Taking over the ranch? No, actually. My father wanted me to go back east, get a proper education, maybe become a lawyer or a banker. He thought ranching was too hard a life, that I deserved better. But I loved this land, loved the work. I could not imagine doing anything else. He smiled slightly. He was disappointed at first, but eventually he came to understand. I am glad you stayed, Elena said softly. I think you were meant to be here. Their eyes met and held, and Elena felt that flutter in her chest again, stronger this time. Nathan's expression shifted into something she could not quite read, something warm and yearning and careful all at once. I am glad I stayed too, he said quietly. Especially now. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken things, and then Thomas burst through the door with a shout about a broken fence and cattle getting into the neighbor's wheat field. The spell broke and Nathan jumped up to deal with the crisis, but Elena sat frozen for several minutes afterward, her heart pounding. Especially now. What did that mean? Was she reading too much into a simple statement, seeing what she wanted to see? Or was there really something growing between them? Something deeper than employer and employee? She thought about it constantly over the next few days, analyzing every interaction, every glance, every word. Nathan did not help matters by being even more attentive than usual, finding excuses to spend time with her, asking her to ride with him when he checked the far pastures. You should see more of the ranch, he said when she hesitated about the ride. Besides, I could use the company. So Elena found herself on horseback for the first time in years, riding a gentle mare named Sage beside Nathan as they traversed the Iverson land. He showed her the creek where the cattle watered, the high pasture where they moved the herd in summer, the ancient oak tree that marked the northern boundary of his property. This is my favorite spot, he said, dismounting near the oak tree and helping Elena down. From here, they could see for miles in every direction, the ranch spread out below them like a patchwork quilt of gold and green. I can see why, Elena said, breathless from more than just the ride. It is beautiful. I used to come here when I was younger, whenever I needed to think or make a decision. Something about being up high, seeing everything laid out before you, it helps put things in perspective. What kinds of decisions did you make here? Nathan leaned against the oak tree, his eyes on the distant horizon. Whether to stay or go when my father wanted me to leave. Whether to expand the herd after a bad winter killed off a quarter of my stock. Whether to keep trying when it felt like everything was going wrong. He paused, then added quietly, Whether to ask a beautiful woman to stay at my ranch as a housekeeper or walk away and leave her to find something else. Elena's breath caught. You thought about not offering me the job. I thought about it. He turned to look at her directly. Not because I doubted you, but because I knew the moment I saw you that you were someone special, someone who could matter to me. And I was not sure if bringing you into my life was the selfish choice or the right one. What made you decide? The look in your eyes when that bartender turned you away. The set of your shoulders when you walked out, like you were refusing to give up even though you had every reason to. I thought, here is someone who is brave and strong and worth knowing. And then I thought, if I let you walk out that door without at least offering, I would regret it for the rest of my life. Elena's heart was racing now, her hands trembling slightly. Nathan, I am not trying to pressure you, he interrupted quickly. I know you came here for work, for safety, not for romance. I have tried so hard to be professional, to keep my distance. But I cannot stop thinking about you, Elena. I cannot stop hoping that maybe, possibly, you might feel even a fraction of what I feel. She stared at him, this good man who had saved her when she had nowhere else to turn, who had treated her with respect and kindness, who made her laugh and made her feel valued. And she realized that somewhere along the way, without quite meaning to, she had fallen in love with him. It is not a fraction, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathan, I think I feel exactly what you feel. His face transformed, hope and joy and relief all at once. Truly, truly. She took a step closer to him. I tried not to. I told myself it was foolish, that I was just grateful for the job, that I was confusing kindness for something more. But the truth is, I have been falling in love with you since that first day in the saloon. Nathan closed the distance between them, reaching out to cup her face gently in his calloused hands. Elena Lawrence, you are the most remarkable woman I have ever met. May I kiss you? She answered by rising on her toes and pressing her lips to his. The kiss was sweet and careful at first, a question and an answer all at once. Then Nathan's arms came around her, pulling her closer, and the kiss deepened into something that felt like coming home. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. I have been wanting to do that for weeks. I wish you had done it sooner, Elena said, making him laugh. They stood there beneath the oak tree, holding each other and watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. Elena felt a peace settle over her that she had not experienced since before the fire, maybe even before that. This was what she had been searching for without knowing it, not just safety or work or security, but this. Love, belonging, home. What happens now? She asked eventually. Now we figure it out together, Nathan said. If you are willing. I know this is sudden and we have only known each other a short time. I do not want to rush you into anything you are not ready for. Elena pulled back enough to look into his eyes. I am willing, more than willing. But Nathan, you should know, I have nothing to bring to this. No money, no property, no family, just myself. Just yourself is everything I want, he said firmly. Elena, I am not looking for money or connections or anything else. I am looking for a partner, someone to build a life with. And I cannot imagine anyone I would rather build that life with than you. She kissed him again, softer this time, full of promise. Then yes, let us figure it out together. They rode back to the ranch as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. Jack and Thomas were waiting on the porch, and one look at Nathan and Elena's faces told them everything they needed to know. It is about damn time, Thomas said, grinning. We were taking bets on how long it would take you two to figure out what the rest of us could see from day one. Who won? Nathan asked, helping Elena down from her horse. Nobody yet. We gave it another week at least. Jack shook his head in mock disappointment. You two couldn't have waited a bit longer. Sorry to disappoint, Elena said, unable to stop smiling. We are not disappointed, Jack assured her. We are happy for you both. Nathan has been moping around here like a lovesick calf for weeks now. It was getting pathetic. I was not moping, Nathan protested. You absolutely were, Thomas agreed. But we will forgive you because we like Miss Lawrence and we are glad she is sticking around. I am not going anywhere, Elena said, looking at Nathan. Not if I can help it. That night, they had a celebration dinner, with Elena cooking a special meal and Thomas producing a bottle of whiskey he had been saving for a special occasion. They toasted to the future, to love, to the ranch, to everything good and hopeful in the world. Later, after the Wells brothers had retired to the bunkhouse, Nathan walked Elena to her room. They stood in the hallway, reluctant to part even for sleep. I know we should take this slow, Nathan said, holding both her hands. Court properly, give you time to be sure. I am already sure, Elena said, but I understand what you mean. We should do this right. How does a December wedding sound? That gives us 4 months to plan, for you to be certain, for me to court you the way you deserve. December sounds perfect. Elena squeezed his hands. But Nathan, you do not have to court me. I already know who you are. I have seen you every day for weeks now. I know you are kind and honest and hardworking. I know you treat people with respect. I know you make me laugh and make me feel safe. What more could I possibly learn? How about whether I can dance? Whether I can carry a tune? Whether I snore? Nathan was teasing now, his eyes warm with affection. Do you snore? A little, according to my sister. I can live with that. Elena rose on her toes to kiss his cheek. Good night, Nathan. Good night, my love. The words sent a thrill through her, my love, said so easily and naturally. She went into her room and closed the door, then immediately opened it again. Nathan, he had not moved, was still standing in the hallway with a slightly dazed expression. Yes, I love you. His face lit up like the sun breaking through clouds. I love you too, Elena, so very much. This time when she closed the door, she leaned against it and listened to him walk away, whistling a cheerful tune. She got ready for bed with a smile that would not fade, and when she finally lay down, she felt happier than she could remember being in her entire life. The next months were among the best of Elena's life. Nathan courted her with a sweetness and dedication that made her fall even more deeply in love with him. He brought her wildflowers from the hills, took her on picnics by the creek, taught her to rope a fence post and then laughed with her when she missed by a mile. He held her hand while they watched the sunset, kissed her beneath the stars, told her every day how much she meant to him. They talked about everything, learning each other's histories and hopes and fears. Nathan told her about his childhood on the ranch, about his mother who had died of pneumonia when he was 15, about his father who had never quite recovered from the loss. Elena told him about growing up in the general store, about her mother's love of roses and her father's terrible singing voice and the happy memories that made the loss more bearable. I wish I could have met them, Nathan said one evening as they sat on the porch swing. They sound like wonderful people. They would have liked you, Elena said, leaning her head on his shoulder. My father would have appreciated your honesty and my mother would have loved your kindness. Do you think they would have approved of us? Elena considered this seriously. I think they would have wanted me to be happy, and you make me happy, Nathan. Happier than I knew I could be. He kissed the top of her head. That is all I want for the rest of our lives, to make you happy. As September gave way to October, they began planning the wedding in earnest. It would be a small affair, held at the ranch since Elena had no church community in San Diego anymore. They would invite the Wells brothers, of course, and a few neighboring ranchers Nathan was friendly with. The local circuit preacher agreed to come out and perform the ceremony. Elena sewed her own wedding dress, a simple but elegant creation in cream-colored silk that Nathan bought for her in San Diego. She made it in the evenings while he read aloud to her, his voice a comfortable backdrop to the rhythm of her needle. They read novels and poetry and agricultural journals, arguing good-naturedly about everything from the best breeding stock to whether Shakespeare's sonnets were overly sentimental. "They are romantic," Nathan defended. "There is a difference." "They are sentimental," Elena insisted, laughing at his offended expression. "But I love that you like them anyway. I am secure enough in my masculinity to appreciate good poetry. One of the many reasons I am marrying you." November brought cooler weather and the hard work of preparing for winter. Nathan and the Wells brothers spent long days moving the herd to the lower pastures and reinforcing the barn and outbuildings. Elena stocked the pantry with preserved vegetables and fruits, salted meat and smoked fish, enough to see them through even the harshest winter. She also worked on making the house feel more like a home they would share rather than Nathan's bachelor quarters. She sewed new curtains for the windows, crocheted a blanket for their bed, arranged furniture to create cozy spaces for reading and talking. Nathan watched these transformations with obvious pleasure, often stopping in the middle of his workday just to see what new change she had made. "You have made this place beautiful," he told her, wrapping his arms around her waist as she hung new curtains in the main room. "I did not realize how empty it felt before you came." "It was not empty," Elena said, turning in his embrace to face him. "It was just waiting. Waiting for the right person to make it complete." "I was waiting," Nathan agreed. "Waiting for you, even though I did not know it yet." December arrived with clear, cold days and crisp nights, and suddenly the wedding was just a week away. Elena felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness, not about marrying Nathan but about the ceremony itself, about standing up in front of people and making promises that would bind them together for life. "What if I forget my vows?" she worried aloud the night before the wedding. "Then I will remind you," Nathan said calmly. They were sitting by the fire, stealing a last evening alone before the wedding guests arrived tomorrow. "Elena, it does not matter if you forget the words or trip over your dress or anything else goes wrong. All that matters is that by the end of tomorrow you will be my wife." "Your wife," Elena repeated, testing out the words. "Elena Iverson. Do you like the sound of it?" "I love the sound of it." She moved from her chair to sit beside him on the floor, leaning against his chest as he wrapped his arms around her. "I love everything about this, about you, about the life we are going to build together." "Tell me about that life," Nathan said softly. "What do you see when you imagine our future?" Elena closed her eyes, picturing it clearly. "I see this ranch growing, becoming even more prosperous. I see children, maybe 3 or 4, running through these rooms and learning to ride horses in the pastures. I see us growing old together, sitting on that porch when we are gray and weathered, watching our grandchildren play. I see a life full of love and work and simple joys. What do you see?" "Exactly the same thing," Nathan said, his voice rough with emotion. "Exactly that." The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful, the December sun bright in a cloudless sky. Elena woke early, too excited to sleep, and found that someone, probably Jack or Thomas, had left wildflowers on her doorstep despite the season. She brought them inside and added them to her simple bouquet, touched by the thoughtfulness. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon, giving everyone time to prepare. Elena dressed carefully in her cream silk gown, pinning her dark hair up in an elegant style her mother had once taught her. She wore her mother's locket and her father's pocket watch tucked into a hidden pocket in her dress, carrying them both with her as she began this new chapter. There was a knock on her door and Thomas called, "Miss Lawrence." Nathan sent me to escort you out when you are ready." Elena took a deep breath, looked at herself one last time in the mirror and opened the door. Thomas's eyes widened. "You look beautiful, Miss Lawrence." "Nathan is going to forget how to speak when he sees you." "Let us hope not," Elena said, smiling. "I need him to say at least 2 words during the ceremony." Thomas laughed and offered his arm. "Come on then, let us get you married." They had set up the ceremony area on the front lawn, with chairs arranged in neat rows and an arch decorated with evergreen branches. It was simple but lovely, with the ranch buildings as a backdrop and the hills rising behind them. A small group had gathered, the Wells brothers and about a dozen neighboring ranchers with their families, all dressed in their Sunday best, and standing at the front next to the circuit preacher was Nathan. He wore a new suit, dark and well-fitted, and his hair was neatly combed. But it was his face that made Elena's breath catch, the look of absolute awe and love as he watched her approach. The ceremony itself passed in a blur. Elena heard herself speaking the vows, heard Nathan's strong, clear voice promising to love and cherish her, felt the weight of the simple gold band he slipped onto her finger. The preacher pronounced them man and wife, and Nathan kissed her gently, reverently, as their small audience cheered. "Hello, Mrs. Iverson," he whispered against her lips. "Hello, husband," she whispered back. The reception was held in the barn, which had been cleaned and decorated for the occasion. There was a feast of roasted beef and potatoes and vegetables, pies and cakes that neighboring women had contributed, and even a small band of musicians who played lively tunes for dancing. Nathan was right that he could dance, Elena discovered with delight. He swept her around the floor with confidence, his hand firm at her waist, his eyes never leaving hers. "This is the happiest day of my life," he said as they moved to the music. "Mine too," Elena agreed. "Nathan, I just want you to know I am so grateful for everything. For that day in the saloon, for giving me a chance, for loving me." "I am the grateful one," Nathan said seriously. "You have made me happier than I ever thought possible. You have made this ranch a home and my life complete. I promise I will spend every day trying to deserve you." "You already deserve me. We deserve each other." Elena smiled up at him. "We are going to have a wonderful life, Nathan Iverson." "Yes, we are," he agreed, and kissed her there in the middle of the dance floor to the hoots and applause of their guests. As the sun set and the celebration continued, Elena looked around at the barn full of friendly faces, at the ranch that was now her home, at the man who was now her husband. She thought about how far she had come from that desperate woman going from saloon to saloon, begging for work. She thought about the fire that had taken everything from her, and how from those ashes a new life had grown. Sometimes second chances came when you least expected them. Sometimes they came in the form of a cowboy who said, "Work for me, but only if you want to." Sometimes they came with no strings attached, just honest work and mutual respect. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, they turned into love. The party lasted well into the evening, but eventually the guests began to depart, waving goodbye and offering congratulations. Jack and Thomas shook Nathan's hand and kissed Elena's cheek, then discreetly headed to the bunkhouse to give the newlyweds privacy. Nathan and Elena walked slowly back to the house, hand in hand, neither speaking. There was a shyness between them now, a sweet nervousness about crossing this final threshold. At the door, Nathan stopped and turned to Elena. "May I carry you over the threshold? I know it is traditional and I want to do this right." "I would like that," Elena said. He scooped her up easily, making her laugh, and carried her through the door into their home. But instead of setting her down immediately, he held her for a moment, just looking at her. "I love you, Elena Iverson." "I love you too, Nathan Iverson." He kissed her then, deeply and thoroughly, and carried her down the hall to what was now their shared bedroom. And as the door closed behind them, Elena sent up a silent thank you to whatever force had guided her steps into that saloon, to the man who had offered her work with no expectations, to the love that had grown between them like a flower in the desert. The first months of marriage were an adjustment, learning to share space and make decisions together, but it was also a time of deep joy. Elena loved waking up beside Nathan every morning, loved the way he kissed her forehead before getting up for the day, loved the routine they established of having coffee together before the work began. The ranch kept them both busy through the winter months. Nathan and the Wells brothers tended the cattle and maintained the buildings, while Elena kept the household running smoothly. But they always made time for each other, for evening meals and quiet conversations and stolen moments of affection throughout the day. In late February, Elena began to feel unwell in the mornings. At first, she thought it was something she ate, but when the nausea continued day after day, she realized with a mixture of joy and trepidation what it might mean. She waited another week to be sure, then told Nathan one evening as they prepared for bed. "I think I am with child," she said quietly. Nathan froze in the act of removing his boots. "Truly, truly, I am almost certain." He crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she might break. "Elena, this is wonderful. Are you happy?" "I am terrified," she admitted, "and thrilled and happy, all at once." "I am all of those things too." He pulled back to look at her face. "We are going to be parents. We are going to be parents," Elena repeated, and suddenly it felt real. They were starting a family, creating a new generation on this ranch. "Your mother and father would have been so happy." "They would have adored you," Nathan said, "just like I do." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and as Elena's belly grew, Nathan became even more protective and attentive. He insisted she rest more, reduced her workload over her protests, and fussed over her like a mother hen. It was both endearing and occasionally exasperating. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," she told him in June when he tried to stop her from carrying a basket of laundry. "I know, but I worry. I cannot help it." Elena softened at the concern in his eyes. "I know you worry, and I love you for it, but I am strong, Nathan. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time." "Not my wife having my baby," he pointed out. "That is different." She laughed and kissed him. "Fair enough, but I promise to tell you if I need help, all right, all right." Summer passed in a haze of heat and preparation. Elena sewed tiny clothes and blankets, preparing a nursery in what had been the guest room. Nathan built a cradle with his own hands, sanding and polishing it until it gleamed. They debated names endlessly, finally settling on Henry if it was a boy and Margaret if it was a girl. In late September, as the weather began to cool again, Elena felt the first pains of labor. They had arranged for a midwife from San Diego to come stay with them for the last few weeks of the pregnancy, and the woman took charge with the calm efficiency of long experience. "First babies take their time," she told Nathan, who was pacing the hallway like a caged animal. "Why do you not go outside and let me take care of your wife?" "I want to stay with her," Nathan said stubbornly. Elena, in the brief respite between contractions, called out, "Let him stay." "I want him here." So Nathan stayed, holding Elena's hand and wiping her forehead and murmuring encouragement through the long hours of labor. It was harder than anything Elena had ever done, pain unlike anything she had imagined, but Nathan's presence gave her strength. Finally, as the sun rose on a new day, their son came into the world with a lusty cry that announced his arrival to the entire ranch. The midwife cleaned him up and placed him in Elena's arms, and she looked down at the tiny red face with a sense of overwhelming love. "Hello, Henry," she whispered. Nathan was staring at his son with tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect. Elena, you are amazing. He is perfect. Would you like to hold him?" Nathan took the baby with trembling hands, cradling him as if he were the most precious thing in the world. "Hello, son. Welcome to the ranch. We are so happy you are here." Elena watched her husband with their child and felt her heart expand. This was what she had imagined that night before their wedding, this life of love and family, and it was more beautiful than she could have dreamed. The first few weeks with a newborn were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Henry was a healthy baby with a good appetite and strong lungs, and he quickly had the entire household wrapped around his tiny fingers. Jack and Thomas took turns peering into the nursery with expressions of awe, as if they had never seen a baby before. "He has your eyes," Thomas observed one afternoon, looking from Elena to Henry and back again. "And Nathan's stubborn chin," Elena added, making Nathan laugh. "I am not stubborn." "You absolutely are," Jack said. "Remember when you insisted you could fix that wagon wheel yourself and ended up having to call in the blacksmith anyway? That was different. That wheel was cursed." They fell back into the easy banter that characterized their household. But now, with the addition of baby sounds and the ever-present awareness of Henry sleeping in his cradle. Elena loved watching Nathan with their son, the gentleness with which he held him, the way he would sing old cowboy ballads to get Henry to sleep. "You are going to spoil him," she said one evening, watching Nathan rock their son. "A father's prerogative," Nathan replied contentedly. "Besides, he is only a baby once. I want to savor every moment." As Henry grew from a newborn into a baby who smiled and laughed and reached for things, the ranch entered a new season of prosperity. Nathan made several successful cattle sales, and he began to expand the operation, buying additional land and hiring another ranch hand to help with the increased workload. "We could afford to build on to the house," he said one evening as they discussed their growing savings. "Add another bedroom or two. I hope Henry will have brothers and sisters after all." "That would be nice," Elena agreed. She was already expecting again, though it was early yet and they had not told anyone. "Maybe a larger kitchen too. This one feels cramped sometimes." They made plans and dreamed together, always with Henry as the center of their world but not forgetting each other. Nathan still brought Elena flowers, still told her every day that he loved her, still made time for them to sit together in the evenings and talk about everything and nothing. On their second wedding anniversary, Nathan gave Elena a beautiful shawl of soft blue wool. "For all the cold evenings we have ahead of us," he said. "Growing old together on that porch, just like you imagined." "It is perfect," Elena said, wrapping it around her shoulders. "Nathan, I have to tell you something." His expression immediately shifted to concern. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am wonderful. We are going to have another baby." The joy that spread across his face was everything she could have hoped for. He pulled her into his arms, careful of her belly, and held her close. "Another child. Elena, you have made me the happiest man alive." "We have made each other happy," she corrected. "That was always the point, was it not? To build a life together, to be happy." "To be happy," Nathan echoed. "And we are. So very, very happy." Their second child, a daughter they named Margaret, arrived the following summer. She was a calmer baby than Henry had been, with a sweet disposition and her father's dark hair. Henry, now nearly 2 years old, was fascinated by his little sister, always wanting to help take care of her. "Gentle," Elena would remind him as he patted Margaret's head. "Very gentle with the baby." Watching her 2 children together, Elena felt a contentment she had never imagined possible. This was what she had been meant for, this family, this life. Not running a general store or doing any of the other things she had thought she wanted. This was her purpose, her joy. The years passed in the way they do when life is good, quickly and yet full of memorable moments. Henry learned to ride almost before he could walk, following his father and the ranch hands around with devoted attention. Margaret grew into a bright, curious toddler who asked endless questions about everything she saw. When Henry was 5 and Margaret was 3, Elena gave birth to twin boys, Samuel and Daniel. The household became even more chaotic and wonderful, full of the sounds of children laughing and playing. Nathan hired more help to assist with both the ranch and the housework, but Elena never let anyone else take over the care of her children. That was her domain, her privilege. "You have your hands full," the neighboring ranchers' wives would say when they visited, watching the 4 children run around. "I have my hands full of blessings," Elena would reply, and she meant it. Nathan was a devoted father, spending every spare moment with his children. He taught them to ride and rope, told them stories about their grandparents, showed them how to care for the land and the animals. But he never let his role as a father overshadow his role as a husband. "How do you still manage to make time for me?" Elena asked him one evening after they had finally gotten all 4 children to bed. They were sitting on the porch, wrapped in blankets against the cool autumn air, watching the stars come out. "Because you are the reason for all of this," Nathan said simply. "The children are wonderful and I love them with everything I have. But you are the heart of this family, Elena. You are the heart of my life. I will always make time for you." She leaned against him, feeling the familiar warmth and strength of his body. "Do you ever think about that day in the saloon, when you offered me work, all the time? I think about how close I came to walking past you to minding my own business, and then I think about everything I would have missed if I had made that choice." "I was so desperate that day," Elena admitted. "I had almost given up hope, and then there you were, like something out of a dream, offering me work but only if I wanted to, giving me the choice, the dignity of choosing. I am glad you chose to come here, to stay, to love me." "I will always choose you," Elena said. "In any life, in any circumstance, I would always choose you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the night deepen around them. Inside, their children slept peacefully. In the barn, the horses shuffled and snorted. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called out to the moon. It was the sound of home, of a life well lived, of love that had grown from a simple offer of work into something magnificent. As the children grew, the ranch grew with them. Nathan expanded the operation until the Iverson Ranch was one of the most successful in San Diego County. But success never changed him, never made him proud or arrogant. He remained the same kind, honest man who had offered a desperate woman a job without expectations. Henry, as the oldest, began taking on more responsibilities around the ranch when he turned 12. He had his father's work ethic and his mother's practical mind, and it was clear he would one day make a fine rancher himself. Margaret developed a love for growing things, taking over Elena's small garden and expanding it into a proper vegetable plot that helped feed the entire ranch. The twins were still young, but they showed promise of being skilled riders and cattlemen. "You have done well," Elena told Nathan one evening as they watched their children from the porch. Henry was teaching Margaret how to mend a fence while the twins played nearby. "You have built something important here, not just a successful ranch but a family, a legacy." "We have built it," Nathan corrected. "None of this would exist without you, Elena. You are the foundation of everything." She smiled, taking his hand. They were both in their 40s now, with gray threading through their hair and lines on their faces from years of sun and laughter. But Elena still felt the same flutter in her chest when Nathan looked at her, still felt like the young woman who had fallen in love with a cowboy's kindness. "Do you remember what you said to me before we married?" she asked. "About imagining our future, I remember. You said you saw us growing old together on this porch, watching our grandchildren play." "We are halfway there," Elena observed. "Growing old together." "Not old," Nathan protested. "Mature, distinguished," Elena laughed. "We are definitely getting old, but I do not mind. I would not trade a single gray hair or wrinkle if it meant missing out on this life with you." "Neither would I." Nathan raised her hand to his lips, kissing it gently. "You are as beautiful to me now as you were the day I first saw you in that saloon. More beautiful, actually, because now I know everything that beauty encompasses. Your strength, your kindness, your love for our family. You are remarkable, Elena Iverson." "I love you," she said simply, because sometimes those 3 words said everything that needed to be said. "I love you too, always and forever." The years continued to pass, bringing both joys and challenges. They weathered droughts and harsh winters, disease in the herd and accidents around the ranch. But they weathered them together, as a family, and came through stronger each time. When Henry turned 20, he married a sweet girl named Catherine from a neighboring ranch. The wedding was held at the Iverson Ranch, and as Elena watched her son exchange vows, she remembered her own wedding day, the joy and promise of it. She felt Nathan's hand find hers and squeezed it tightly. "One down, 3 to go," he whispered, making her laugh even as tears streamed down her face. Margaret married at 22, a doctor from San Diego who appreciated her intelligence and her garden. The twins took their time, both determined to establish themselves in their chosen paths before settling down, but eventually they too found love and married. And then came the grandchildren. First Henry's son, Nathan Jr., who had his grandfather's dark hair and serious expression. Then Margaret's daughter, Elena Rose, who had her grandmother's smile. The twins added 4 more grandchildren between them, and suddenly the ranch was full of the sound of young voices again. "You were right," Nathan said one evening as they sat on the porch, watching 3 of their grandchildren play in the yard while Henry and Catherine supervised. "This is exactly what you imagined. Growing old together, watching our grandchildren play." "It is even better than I imagined," Elena said contentedly. She was 65 now and Nathan 68, both of them slowed by age but still active and engaged with the ranch and their family. "I never knew it was possible to be this happy." "Neither did I. Before you, I thought I was content. I had the ranch, I had work, I had friends, but I did not know what happiness really meant until I met you." Elena turned to look at him, this man who had been her companion and partner in love for more than 4 decades. His hair was white now, his face deeply lined, but his eyes were still the same warm brown that had captured her heart so long ago. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For that day in the saloon. For offering me work without expectations. For treating me with respect when I had nothing. For loving me." Nathan cupped her face in his weathered hands. "Thank you for accepting. For taking a chance on a lonely cowboy and his messy house. For building this beautiful life with me." They kissed, gentle and sweet, while their grandchildren's laughter rang out across the ranch. It was a perfect moment, a culmination of all the choices they had made, all the love they had shared. As the sun set over the Iverson ranch, painting the sky in brilliant colors, Elena reflected on the strange path her life had taken. From the ashes of loss had come new life, new love, new purpose. She had been begging for work in every saloon, desperate and alone, and a cowboy had said, "Work for me, but only if you want to." That simple offer, given freely without demands or expectations, had changed everything. It had led to work, yes, but also to respect, to friendship, to love. It had led to this ranch, to these children and grandchildren, to this man who still made her heart skip a beat even after all these years. "What are you thinking about?" Nathan asked, watching her face in the fading light. "I am thinking about how lucky I am," Elena said. "How lucky we are. To have found each other, to have built this life, to have loved so well." "The luckiest," Nathan agreed. He pulled her close, and they sat together as the stars began to appear one by one in the darkening sky. Inside the house, their children and grandchildren were gathering for dinner, the sound of their voices warm and welcoming. In the barn, the horses settled for the night. In the fields, the cattle grazed peacefully under the watchful eye of the ranch hands who had become like family over the years. Everything was as it should be. Everything was exactly right. As Elena and Nathan finally rose to join their family inside, she took one last look at the ranch spread out before them. This land that had become their kingdom, their legacy, their home. This place where love had grown from the smallest seed into something magnificent and enduring. "Ready?" Nathan asked, offering his arm. "Always," Elena said, taking it. "As long as I am with you, I am always ready." They walked into the house together, into the warmth and light and love that filled every corner. And if anyone had asked Elena in that moment if she had any regrets, if she wished anything had been different, she would have said no without hesitation. Because this life, this beautiful, messy, perfect life, was everything she had never known she wanted. And it had all started with a simple offer from a kind cowboy who saw her not as a desperate woman to be pitied, but as a person worthy of respect and dignity. "Work for me, but only if you want to," he had said, and she had wanted to. Oh, how she had wanted to, and in choosing to say yes that day, she had chosen everything that came after. The love, the family, the joy, the partnership. All of it had flowed from that one moment of kindness, that one choice to see someone's humanity when they were at their lowest. As Elena settled at the table surrounded by the people she loved most in the world, she raised her glass when Nathan proposed a toast. "To family," he said, his eyes finding hers across the table. "To love that endures, and to the courage to say yes when opportunity knocks." "To family," everyone echoed. "To love, to saying yes." They drank, and the meal began, full of laughter and conversation and the comfortable chaos of a large family gathering. Elena ate and talked and enjoyed every moment, but part of her mind was already looking forward to later, when it would be just her and Nathan again, sitting on their porch and watching the stars. Those quiet moments together were still her favorite part of each day, even after more than 40 years. The chance to just be with him, to hold his hand and share the comfortable silence of two people who knew each other completely. That night, after everyone had left and the house was quiet once more, they did exactly that. Wrapped in blankets against the cool evening air, they sat on the porch and watched the stars wheel overhead. "You know what today is?" Nathan asked after a while. Elena thought for a moment, then smiled. "It is 43 years to the day since you walked into that saloon and changed my life. I was hoping you would remember. I have something for you." He pulled a small, wrapped package from his pocket and handed it to her. Inside was a beautiful silver locket, intricately engraved with roses and vines. Elena opened it carefully and found two tiny photographs inside. One was from their wedding day, both of them young and radiant with happiness. The other was from just last month, taken by Margaret's husband with his new camera, showing them on this very porch with several of their grandchildren. "Past and present," Nathan said softly. "Everything we were and everything we have become. I thought you might like to carry it with you the way you carried your parents' portraits all those years ago." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "It is perfect. Nathan, you did not have to do this. I wanted to. I want you to always remember that day, that moment when our lives changed. Because I think about it all the time, Elena. I think about how close I came to losing you before I ever found you, and I am grateful every single day that I walked into that saloon when I did. I am grateful too, Elena said, fastening the locket around her neck. For everything. For you, for this life, for every moment we have shared. They held each other close, two people who had grown old together and loved every minute of it. Around them, the ranch settled into night, peaceful and secure. Inside the locket, the two photographs represented a life well lived, a love story that had started with desperation and kindness, and grown into something beautiful beyond measure. And as Elena drifted off to sleep that night, safe in Nathan's arms, she knew with absolute certainty that she would not change a single thing about her life. Not the hardships that had brought her to that saloon, not the desperate search for work, not even the pain of losing her parents. Because all of it, every triumph and tragedy, every joy and sorrow, had led her to this man and this life. Had led her to love so deep and true that it had sustained her through more than 4 decades and would sustain her through whatever years remained. She had been begging for work in every saloon, lost and alone and afraid, and the cowboy had said, "Work for me, but only if you want to." She had wanted to then, and she would want to for the rest of her life and beyond. That was the true gift Nathan had given her that day in the saloon, not just work or security or even love, though all of those had come in time. The true gift was choice. The dignity of choosing her own path, of being seen as a person worthy of respect even at her lowest moment. And Elena had chosen well. She had chosen love, chosen family, chosen a life of meaning and purpose. She had chosen Nathan and he had chosen her, and together they had built something that would last long after they were gone. As sleep claimed her, Elena's last conscious thought was a simple one, but it contained the whole of her life within it. I am home. I am loved. I am exactly where I belong, and that was everything.